Welcome back. In this video on C++, we'll be covering how to print to the console, get input from a user, and ultimately format outputs in the console. So to start off, let's just set up our file on this online compiler on ProgramIs. So first, let's get rid of the unnecessary comments, and let's include a couple more assets, and we'll include string, we'll include manip, IO manip. And then lastly, we'll do using namespace as std. So first, let's start off with printing to the console. So to do so, we use the keyword cout, which is spelled as count. And then you have to do two less than signs. And then here you either have a variable or you have a statement, a string statement, which has to be surrounded in quotes, in double quotes like this. And let me just fix the spelling. So to show you an example of this, it would look like cout, and then we would have the phrase hello world, and then we have to have a semicolon at the end. That's very important in C++ syntax that whenever you want to let the computer know or the compiler know that you want to go to the next line of code, you must use semicolons. And for an example with variables, it would be cout or cout, and then let's say our variable's name is variable1, and then again, you'd have to have a semicolon at the end. So one thing to keep in mind is that whenever we have cout, it won't automatically move the cursor to the next line. So let's say we wanted to print hello world and variable1 on different lines. What it'll just print out is hello world and then variable1 right next to it on the same line. And let's see that in action. So let's say we wanted to cout hello and then semicolon, and then we wanted to cout my name is blank. We would want hello to be on one line and then my name is blank to be on another. But as we can see when we run the code, it'll go on the same line and there won't even be a space between the two that we cout. So in order to actually get them to go on different lines, what we can use is the keyword end line, which is endl. And if we run that code, we can see that it'll go to the next line. So one useful feature whenever it comes to cout within C++ is that you do not have to keep repeating cout over and over again if you want to print more than one statement. The way that we can print out more things within just one cout line in C++ is just by adding another less than sign. So let's say we added another less than sign here, and let's say we copied and pasted this code over here, and we put a semicolon at the end. If we run this code, it'll do the same thing. But what's super important is that you can add as many less than signs as you want and just keep adding statements upon statements upon statements. But what's really important is that you need to have a semicolon at the end so the computer knows when to stop that line of code. And that rule does not apply just to statements. It could also be with variables. So let's create some string variables and let's say string greeting is equal to hello. And then let's put a space here, and then string goodbye is equal to goodbye. And let's put no space here. Let's say we want to cout those. We would just do greeting, and then let's say we want to put them on different lines. We would put end line here, and then more less than signs, and then we can put goodbye. And if we run this code, it will do the same thing. So all in all, the main idea that you need to get is that end line right after it's called will move the cursor to the next line. So greeting will occur, and then we have end line, so we'll move the cursor to the next line, and then goodbye will occur. So now let's talk about getting input from the console log. So to do that, we use the keyword cin, which is spelled sin. And instead of less than signs, we use greater than signs to get input. And what you must do whenever you use cin is that you must assign the user's input to a variable. So here's how it has to look. There has to be sin or cin, and then the greater than signs, and then a variable name. So variable1. And then you can have a semicolon or not. And let's say you wanted to get more than one variable from the user, and you wanted to assign the first input to variable 1, and let's say we had another variable called variable 2. The way that you would have the way that you would assign the second input to variable 2 is by using another greater than sign. And then at the end, we must have a semicolon to let the compiler know that we're done with that line of code. So let's look at an example of this. So first, let's see out a message to the user to indicate what we're asking for. And let's just ask it for its favorite number. So now we need to create a variable, and let's say it's an integer, and we're going to say favorite whole number. Integer fav whole number, and let's initialize it to be 0. And now let's say we wanted to get the input from the user. And let's put an end line here so it goes to the next line. We would do CIN and then greater than signs and then favorite whole number. And just to make sure our code is working, let's see out fav whole number to make sure that it actually is working. So let's run our code, and it's going to say favorite whole number, and let's just say 32, and it should print 32 right beneath it, as that is favorite whole number. And now let's ask it for a favorite decimal number. So in order to do that, first we have to create another variable, and it's going to be a float because it's going to have a decimal in it. So fav decimal number, and let's just set that equal to 0.0. And let's do another cout. And what is your favorite number with a decimal? And then end line. And then let's do a CIN and favorite decimal number. Fav decimal number. And at the end, let's do cout, fav whole number, and then cout end line, fav decimal number. And let's see what this code will run us. And let's comment out this piece of code so it won't disrupt us. So favorite whole number, I'm going to say 32. What's your favorite number with the decimal? 32.14. And as we can see, it'll print out 32 as our favorite whole number and 32.14 for our favorite decimal number. So let's say we wanted to rephrase this a little bit and we just wanted to put this all into one line and use one line of CIN. So favorite whole number, and then let's ask the user, what's your favorite number with the decimal? And then we can delete this. And all we have to do is add another greater than sign. And we get favorite decimal number and then add a semicolon at the end. And now let's see what happens when we run our code. Favorite whole number. So that's going to be the first input that we're going to put in. So let's say 15. And then it's going to ask us for a second input. And what's your favorite number with the decimal? 15.75. And it'll print that in that order because we're printing favorite whole number and then favorite decimal number. So we could use CIN to get basically any data type variable. But let's say that we're dealing with a string. Whenever we specifically want to get the input of a string that a user inputs, we have to use another method, and it's called getLine. So the syntax of it is getLine, and then CIN, which is familiar, and then the name of the string variable. So let's look at an example. So let's comment out these pieces of code so nothing gets printed out or no input gets asked for. And let's create a string variable called name. And let's just set it to blank. Now let's ask the user, what is your name? And let's end line. Now if we do CIN, we can't do CIN with this. So we have to use getLine, CIN, and then the name of our string variable is called name. And let's run this code and see what happens. And let's print out name at the end so we can see that it actually updated. So it'll ask us, what is your name? My name is Raj. And since we printed out Raj again, we get Raj underneath Raj. So yeah, whenever we're dealing with strings, we have to use getLine, CIN, and then the name of the string variable. But with any other type of data type like integers, floats, booleans, you can use CIN. So finally, let's talk about formatting our outputs into the console log. So this is the console log, and that's where we've been printing our statements. But let's say you wanted to add some alignment or some features of design to the console. So the first method that we can use is called setW, and it has an integer parameter. So a whole number will go inside as a parameter. So what this function does is it sets the minimum width of an outfield. So let's say our outfield is this line right here. Currently, it has a width of 3 since it has 3 characters. But if you wanted it to have 10 characters, then you would set W as equal to 10. And let's see an example of this. So you have to use this function whenever when you're dealing with cout. So let's say we're cout, and then we set W as equal to 15 because that's what we want our width to be. And then we just print the statement hello, and then we end the line. So let's comment out code that we've printed out before. And if we run it, now we see that this whole line has a width of 15. Hello itself has 5 characters, but we said that it has to have 15. So these 10 extra characters, they're just going to be blank. And we have to remember that that set W just sets the minimum width, not the maximum. So let's see an example of where set W, our integer parameter, is going to be less than the actual length of our output. So let's say we wanted to print out Raj Patel, and we just set the width equal to 5. What some people might expect is that it would do Raj, and then it would do the space as the fourth, and the P, and then cut off the rest. But as we could see, whenever we run the code, it does not do that, and Raj Patel is just printed normally. So it's important to realize that this is the minimum width that it's supposed to be. So another important fact is that set W just corresponds with the value that's right next to it. So let's say I'm printing out more than one statement and I have, let's end line, and I say, my friend is George. Then let's set W as equal to 15. And let's just put a couple underscores so that it's greater than 15. It has to be guaranteed greater than 15. What's going to happen is that set W is going to be applied to Raj Patel and not the second one because set W just applies to whatever is right next to it. So as you can see, oh, here we forgot these less than signs. As we could see, it's going to be applied to Raj Patel and not applied to my friend George. Next, we have what is called set precision. And again, it will have an integer parameter. And what this basically does, it sets the decimal precision of float variables. So remember, floats are data types that can hold numbers with decimals. And so basically the set precision method is what rounds these decimals. So there are two ways that set precision can actually work. First is fixed, and then second is scientific. So fixed will just round the float or decimal normally, and scientific will set it into scientific notation. And again, whatever goes inside of the parameter, it's a whole number, and it's going to be to what place the number is going to be rounded. So if I put 1, it's going to be to the tenths. If I put it to 2, it's going to be the hundreds. If I put 3, the thousands. So let's see some examples of this. So let's comment out this piece of code so that it doesn't bother us. And let's create some more lines. So let's create a float variable, and it's going to be float total weight. And let's set it equal to 50.42254. Now let's see out set precision 2, which I wanted to round to the hundreds place. And then we're going to do it fixed. And then we're going to print out total weight. And then we're going to put end line. And let's see what gets printed out. Set precision, I probably spelled it wrong. It's precision. And as we can see, it's rounded to the hundreds place, which is 4 2. Now let's set now let's say that we set precision as equal to 3. Now we want it rounded to the thousandths place. So let's see what happens. And as you can see, we get 50.423, and that's because it'll look at the fourth decimal place, and since that's 5 or greater, it'll round up the one that's previous. So we get 423. And last but not least, I want to show you scientific notation just so that you're aware. So let's change fixed to scientific. And as we can see, it'll be put into scientific notation. And usually, whenever it goes E plus and then it has a number here, that usually means 10 to the power of something. So in this case, it's going to be 10 to the power of 1. Next, we have the left and the right operators, and this will format the outputs either all the way to the left or all the way to the right. So it's very similar to the text line features on Word or Google Docs. So let's look at an example of left and right alignment with some of the concepts that we learned previously. So let's just delete this and let's say C out, and then we wanted to set the width to 40 because that's just the width of this whole line. And if we had 40 spaces, we'd be able to move it more to the left or more to the right. And then let's create this, let's set it equal to left. We want it aligned to the left, and we want to print out totals all the way on the left. And within C++, the indents that you have between lines, they don't really matter because the computer is always going to consider them as one line. What really matters is where the semicolon is. So just for our sake, let's just move it to the next line. And then let's say we have another line, which is set W. And remember, it'll only apply to the thing that comes right next to it. So set 40 is only going to be applied to totals. So set W, and let's say we want this set to the right. And then we want to set total weight as equal, and we want to round total weight to set precision 2. So we want to round it to the hundredths place. And let's make it fixed instead of scientific, and let's print out total weight. And then at the end right here, we'll do the semicolon so the compiler knows to stop running that is all one line of code. So if we run it, and I forgot to have the parameter inside here, let's set it as equal to 20. If we run our code, we could see that totals is going to be aligned to the left, and then let's say we put an end line between the right and left line. Let's put an end line here. As you can see, this one will be all the way to the right because that's where we aligned it. Last but not least, we have set fill. And now instead of a integer parameter, it actually has a constant character variable or value. So like we talked about in previous videos, characters are just 1 in length, and they could either be a number 0 through 9, a letter, a space, or a punctuation, or some form of symbol. And like we also talked about in other videos, constants are variables that once they're declared, their value cannot be changed. So our example before was a baker's dozen. You cannot change a baker's dozen from 13. So what actually is the purpose of set fill? So like we were talking about with the set width, there might be some spaces that are left over. So let's say you want 20 characters that you want to display, and you do set W as equal to 20, but 15 of those spaces are not taken up. So let's say we just put hello. Then set fill will set those 15 spaces with a specified character, which you specify as the parameter of set fill, and it has to be a character. So let me try to visualize this for us. So let's create a constant variable, which is a character. And remember, usually for constant variables, we use the notation of fully capitalizing the name. So we're going to put custom fill, and let's just set it equal to x. And then we'll put a semicolon. And then now let's say we want to see out, and I'm gonna do a bracket so that it's easier for us to see. Bracket, and then we're gonna set the fill, and let's say we want it equal to 10, and then we're gonna print out 13, the number 13. and then we're gonna put end line. And let's finish the bracket off. And now let's do the same thing, but with set fill. So we have C out, we have set W, we have, and instead of 13 here, we're gonna put our custom fill. So set fill, and then custom fill here because it's our constant variable parameter. And now let's see what happens when we run our code. Oh, I forgot to use single quotes instead of, so strings use double quotes and characters use single quotes. I forgot about that. So let's comment out these pieces of code so that they do not disrupt us. But as you can see, whenever there's no set fill, there'll just always be the space. Whereas when there is set fill, as we can see here, it'll fill in those empty spaces with the character value, which in this case is X. Thank you for watching. That's all we have on getting input from the user, displaying to the console, and formatting whatever we're displaying to our console. I hope you learned something new, and again, thank you very much for watching until the end.